From the 305 to the 303, welcome to TCSP. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Dr. Brian and the Casually Serious Band.
In my day, we had bands like Journey, Stereo Speedwagon.
So I'm watching History Part 2 last night, and anybody who knows me and anybody who's a fan of this channel knows how big of a Kiss fan I am. Grew up out. I'm a Halloween baby. I was born on Devil's Night. So I'm watching Part 2, and you know, as any other Kiss head will tell you, you watch these things knowing that they're not going to tell you anything new, especially a band that started the year we were born, which is 1973, 72 if you want to be really, really technical about it. But let's not get into that fight. They've been around a long friggin' time, a very long friggin' time. And I've gone up and down with them. And, you know, my favorite era is all the way up to Creatures of the Night, which is, you know, the early 80s. And then it stops. I didn't really listen to any of the newer stuff. That's just me. But I'm watching it. And at the very end of it, I'm tearing up. Not only because I'm a nostalgic mofo, and music always does that to me, because I'm looking at Gene Simmons and Paul Stanley, old as shit, you know, and you know, still putting the makeup on them, and they're finally saying, this is over. The touring is done. Like, the thing that they did the most all the time, touring and bringing their music to the fans visually, is over. And it made me very sad, because I'm thinking to myself, okay, you know what, Bob, you know, you can't really, nothing lasts forever. I understand that. But you know what, when it comes to music, there was always sort of someone there to sort of take the baton and run with it. And we can start going back historically to the people who did things that Kiss did before, Alice Cooper, all the way back to Screaming Jay Hawkins. I think we did this, actually. But there was a sort of a baton passing of some sort of style of music or something like that. I don't know. But when I watched that, it brought the question back up again to me that I've always kind of said to myself, and I've been saying about the new generation. And I'm not jumping on millennials. I'm just saying this type of music that they have, or the certain bands that they have, are they going to be as popular as a Black Sabbath, a Led Zeppelin, a Rush, Kiss, Van Halen? Where are those bands right now? And where are the bands that are going to be there 30, 20 years from now, getting ready to do a massive reunion because they were so huge back in the early 2000s, mid 2000s, that they have to show the fans that they can do it again. You know what I mean? So that's what this show's about today, man. Are we just too old? I don't freaking know, man. Probably. I mean, I'm wearing a shirt from a band that broke up in 1980, I think. And I only was able to see them about 2-3 years ago for the first time for about $300 a ticket. So, you know, I don't know where my opinion stands on any of this because of how much nostalgia I attach to it. But I think we both wonder, where's the next Dio? Where's the next Michael Jackson? You know what I mean? Like, we can get into some deep stuff right now.
Well, I mean, you just went from Dio to Michael Jackson, so that was a little interesting. But it was very interesting there. And you know, that Kiss stuff out, there's a lot of new stuff in there for us regular folk that don't know everything in the world about Kiss, Bob. So anyway, and I urge you guys to watch it. Really, really good. So you guys should be checking that out for sure. And yeah, you know, your point actually that you made with the Misfits, I think, is a good one, because we were talking before the show about who is going to be that group, that band, that individual that's going to be able to 20, 30, 40 years later sell out stadiums and really just be able to show that their music was either timeless enough or had enough of an impact that enough people would want to come and see that. But like, for instance, the Rolling Stones are going to pack stadiums. I mean, and they have a couple nights in a row. A band like the Misfits, you know, there's a smaller group of people that really, you know, that love that band to the point that 40 years later they would want to go see them. The fact that that band could go put on a show and do that that many years later is what I think is pretty incredible. Now, they're not going to fill a stadium, but they're definitely going to get some real hardcore fans that are going to come there because they want to see that band, especially reunited type bands, things like that. And you're seeing a lot of that happening now with classic rock bands, with 90s bands that are playing literally 40-year, 50-year anniversaries on some of these from when they debuted. So it's really not fair to say, well, how are these guys going to stack up to that? So maybe we go back a little bit and look at even guys in the 90s. So, I mean, is that going to happen? Is Dre going to do that? And Snoop? I mean, is P. Diddy going to come back? And I mean, they could. They're big enough to. But what is it that's going to happen later? And is it going to be individuals? Is it going to be groups? What's going to push that kind of engine to see if these bands have the lasting power like the ones had in those days?
Well, I think the lasting power question is something that is attached to something that a lot of young folks don't know a lot about and won't really have a lot of exposure to in their life, and that's the music business. You know, when the very beginning of all this sort of started happening, where Beatlemania was kicking ass, and record companies were coining the term R&B, which might as well have stood for red and black for all we know, because they couldn't package black music in any other way other than to call it R&B back when rock and roll was popular. But just when the business was pumping this stuff out, they started realizing, okay, there's image and stuff involved and all that stuff. They were able to put it out to an America, let's just say America at this point, that was not really understanding of any of this. We know all about the record business now as Americans. We didn't know that shit in 1950 or 1960, Buddy Holly and these guys, you know, like, so they had massive amounts of money and corporations pushing their music, not only on radio, but in commercials, in lots of other different ways, in movie theaters. There's a lot of different ways they were able to push that. So it was a big machine. And I think you and I were born and lived in an era that was the most possible exposure you can get to all of those eras, record company machine. We saw the rise and fall of all of it during our birth. Now, maybe not the rise, because I think that happened in the late 60s, but we were able to see those bands, you know, come to fruition and stick around for a while.
Right.
And that's not happening anymore. Record companies just really don't exist as much as they do. So I think since bands now have to promote themselves, it might be one of those things that we're either not seeking the new music out, or even if we are, there's just not a lot of it out there because they're having to self-promote, which costs money, as we all know.
Right.
Not
and
everyone has.
And to that point, I was speaking with my niece, who is a millennial, and part of what was said over there is that, you know, the music today, these musicians, like you said, they do have to kind of publicize for themselves and kind of push their own music out there. But they have to be very careful in today's world, because there's just one wrong word, one wrong thing, anything that you do wrong today puts you in a negative view. And once that happens, you go through this sabotage almost of social media that can absolutely destroy a band, and could be from one band member saying something years ago that, well, it's caught on tape because that's how everything is now. And it might have been taken out of context or whatever. I mean, there's a recent example of this today with Billie Eilish, I think is her name, who made some racist comment, you know, many years ago. She's already young. She was even younger when she made it. I'm not going to get into the right or wrong of any of that. But because of that, there's plenty of people, I'm not going to listen. I don't like her anymore. I'm talking young people, you know, because they are so much more, they're much more impressionable, as all young people are in general, but it's more so because it's so in your face. So everybody's talking about it. Everybody's seeing it. So it becomes something that it's a peer thing too. Because as we all grew up and as we were all young teenagers, we're listening to music, we're listening to it with friends. We have time to watch the videos and to really get into it. And it becomes a part of our lifestyle almost. So today it's even bigger, because back then it was just videos and you didn't really know about the bands or the people and who they really were too much, unless you watched these interviews they would do from time to time or read the magazines about them, right? So if you were a nerd about that, you could learn about these people, but for the most part, it wasn't in your face like it is today. So anything you do becomes a huge news story, and all of a sudden that's affected your popularity, thus your music and your standing. That's the part that's crazy.
The cancel culture shit is out of control at this point, but at the same time,
I agree.
I feel like when we, and maybe I'm going to keep saying in my days or when we were younger a lot in this, so just deal with that shit. When we were younger, it was almost sort of like those kinds of screw ups you did as a young person, which is when you're supposed to make those mistakes, by the way.
Right.
If you're 47 making those mistakes, there's something different wrong in your life.
Absolutely.
But you should be getting all that shit out of the way when you were a kid. And back then it was sort of like, oh, you look back and you said, oh, you remember when he called you a cracker-ass cracker? You're like, yeah, he was like 10 years old when he said that, so who cares?
Right.
That was just some dumb shit. But now it's like they dig it up just to make sure there's a way to discredit people. And there's just a lot more viciousness, I think. And I don't really know if we should spin off on that one. But when it comes to the musical part of all this, you would think with the YouTubes and the Spotifys and all the wonderful things that we have and use for our show, that you would have that kind of exposure. But I think really the issue is so much music, I believe now, and if someone wants to come in and debate me on this, please do. I believe music nowadays is just way more disposable than it ever was. Simply because we are a country that gets everything at the click of a button now.
Right.
And
everything's disposable.
Right. The satisfaction of hunting down a record or your music at a local mall and maybe getting one of 5 copies that are going to get sold out in the next 10 minutes, and looking and discovering how the music is supposed to be presented in the gatefold, and possible lyrics if you're lucky. If not, you just got to be an intelligent human and try and figure out how to say, it's not wrapped up like a douche. It's wrapped up like a deuce,
But I like my words better, though, Bob.
Right. And ask Jay. He likes when I make words up for him. But yeah, I think the experience like that is gone too. So I'm not sure. I don't really have any answers for this, other than knowing that, as we were talking about earlier, maybe we don't seek out youthful music because of the nostalgia that we put on it. I know that I put a large amount of memory and nostalgia onto music, and I'm very, very lucky that so much music in my life is attached to the person I'm currently in love with and married to, because so many people get music destroyed by the people that they attach them to. You have to properly attach music to people, ladies and gentlemen. I can't stress that enough. If you're a young person and you're watching this, do not attach great music to everybody you meet. It's just going to screw that band up for you. But we're lucky. We're lucky in that sense. Where we did have sort of that record company machine to blast these bands at us. But there were also amazing bands. Like, so who's the new Zeppelin? Is it Greta Van Fleet we were talking about? Can we compare Coheed and Cambria to Rush simply because both lead singers sound very similar? Are they musically well? I don't know. I actually saw Coheed and Cambria open up for Heaven and Hell, which was just Black Sabbath with Dio singing in 2008. And I saw a crowd of young people who had no idea who the hell Ronnie James Dio and Geezer Butler, Tony Iommi, and Appice were. No idea. They were there for Coheed and Cambria.
Of course.
So there's still a following for a lot of this stuff, but I don't know, man. What's the new music, Ken? What's the new music?
That's my problem with what the new music is for me personally. And again, I'm not going to say one way or the other that this is good or bad. If people like it, they like it. But for me, I want to hear what is the band's talent? What are we listening to here? I mean, it's gotten to be where you used to have to actually learn an instrument, and you had to actually have a good voice before you could be in a band. Like that, those were just prerequisites. You didn't have to be great, because obviously there's, bands like, I'm not going to say, but there's crappy bands. And you just had to at least be able to do some of them on your own. Today, you could sing, and I could sing. Okay, I'm a terrible singer, but there's things that can make my voice sound fantastic, or however I want it to sound.
Sure.
I mean, on top of that, there's machines that can make all the music you want. You could sample anything you want. You could take these pieces and that pieces and mix this with that. And honestly, I've heard some of that. I'm like, oh, that's pretty cool. I like how they did that. But
I think that music serves its purpose in whatever the hell it is.
And there is a purpose for that. And then you look at bands, Linkin Park, bands that kind of mixed a little bit of all that in. Let's throw some rap in. Let's throw some sampling in. Let's have a DJ. Let's have a rock band. We're going to have drums and guitar, and we're going to be heavy, but we're also going to throw some of that. And I like that. Like, I was good with all that mix. I grew up liking rock and hardcore gangster rap. So, I mean, it was like those were on kind of opposite spectrums, but I liked both. So I felt like it was just something that if we continue doing it this way, then, the music would still kind of follow suit with it. But today, I don't feel that's happened. Today, the actual talent is just less. It's just not there. And I could look when I see, Taylor Swift, she writes her own songs, she plays instruments. I have respect for that. I don't like her music, but I have respect for that. Even Justin Bieber, I mean, he plays drums pretty well. I saw once on Jimmy Fallon or something. So, I mean, look, there's at least some talent there. Something is there. They could be called a musician, even if you don't like the music. But some of these guys that do literally nothing other than they're just, I came with the lyrics and you're going to make me sound good and we got that beat right. You only need one jam and boom, you've made it hot. It's viral. That's all you need nowadays. You don't need an album. You don't have to pump out 8 to 10 songs before you could release something. You just need to come up with a song. And we see so many examples of it. And I just question the talent overall.
Is it a genre thing? So, because here's the deal. So let's say have thrash metal, because there's so many different kinds of metal. Let's just say Metallica, one of the best ever. Slayer, one of the greatest ever. Okay, so are there bands that are like that right now? Yeah, there's Municipal Wastes. There's a lot of great bands in thrash and in metal. For some reason, that sort of stayed great. Now, there's not a lot of people who are reinventing metal the way Slayer and the Big Four and these bands did. And I think that kind of goes the same for rap. And by rap, I mean lyrical rap, hardcore rap. There's all kinds of spin-offs of that as well. But hip-hop sort of didn't let shit get bad with them either. I know that mumble rap is out there and exists, and it's making money. But there's always been fads in and out of hip-hop. It's always stayed a very cultural thing. And rap sort of polices itself when it comes to how popular a lot of things can be. So I for some reason, I'm thinking maybe like spin-off rap or a rock music, mainstream music. I think that's sort of maybe where we're getting at, because there's never going to be another Journey, I don't think. There's never going to be another Van Halen, because there'll never be other musicians like Eddie Van Halen or Perry or any of these guys. So it's hard for me to think, all right, well, these guys in Imagine Dragons are going to be like touring for the next 20 years and like, they're going to be making millions and millions of dollars. It's almost like I feel like the life cycle of a band is like 10 years, 5 years now.
Right.
And that's
and
it.
I think that you're right. And it has a lot to do with the throwaway society that we're in and the way people are just constantly out with the old, in with the new. This is, and that's fine. But if the band itself has staying power. So if you look at someone, I mean, Bieber has released a number of albums, right? Taylor Swift's released a number of albums. So you can give some credence. Ed Sheeran, I mean, you're going to be able to pick a few of these out. And I think Taylor Swift is an example of somebody who will be there, and she will be there in decades to come, and she will be able to sell out a lot of venues for a long time. So, but she was almost the closest I could come to finding that, and there's other singers out there and singer-songwriters like herself that, you can talk about too, that I think have, maybe better voices even, and I might even like the music a little bit better, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to be continuously selling their music and selling out venues to the point that they're going to have that, again, staying power. The music is so diluted and spread out everywhere that there are still little factions of people that are listening to some of that new metal you were just talking about. There's, obviously not big groups of, but that's kind of the underground, sort of like what, we were when we were listening to our metal in school, and that wasn't the biggest thing out there. So, there is some of that, but it's all across the board, and it's mixed quite a bit. So I feel like because of that, it's hard for music just to go straight through. And I mean, you just take the Billboard Top 40. I mean, to me, right, isn't that how we always kind of gauged what is it? What are people listening to? And if I look at the Billboard Top 40 right now for June of 2021, I have at least heard of 4 of the top 10. I'm going to read them to you. You tell me what you think, but I've heard of 4 of these guys. So the first one is BTS. I know who that is. The song's called Butter. Next one is Olivia Rodrigo. I don't know who that is.
No idea.
Then there's Dua Lipa. I've heard of Dua Lipa.
I've heard the name, but I have no idea.
Heard the name, know nothing about it. Next is Justin Bieber, so I know that.
Right.
Next is Bruno Mars. I know that.
Right.
The next is The Weeknd. I've heard of The Weeknd.
Okay, we were saturated by The Weeknd more than
we were, definitely. Then Doja Cat. Not heard of them.
Doja Cat I've heard of.
Masked Wolf. Haven't heard of them. And the last one I did hear of Bad Bunny, only because of that commercial with Snoop Dogg. I had no idea who he was.
Isn't Bad Bunny like a Miami artist or?
I have no idea. I didn't even know who he was in that commercial, that Corona commercial. I had to ask other people. I'm like, who is that with Snoop? He's got to be somebody. Bad Bunny. What can I tell you, man? I know none of this. I don't know very much of this at all. I couldn't tell you what any of this is. There's more going down. I scroll down. This Olivia Rodrigo comes up a lot. She's got like 5 songs in the top 40 right now, so she's obviously super hot. But
that's a lot of dance.
She really does. She's got number 7. She's got number 18. She's got number 20. She's got number 28. She's got number 31. She's got number 39. That's where she's at.
And then anybody want to come comment on the comments?
I know. Who's Olivia Rodrigo? I mean, seriously. No, I have no idea who this person is.
I need help, man. I will admit to you, when it comes to a lot of music, I suppose, there's a lot of time for a lot of music when you're growing up. So obviously we can harken back to the days when you and I were able to go get into a big metal tube that a good friend of ours would drive. We would just listen to music for hours. Like, eventually you didn't have time for that shit anymore. So there's a good portion of your time where that music starts becoming an encapsulation of the time that you spent with your friends. And my point is that the nostalgia that you attach to all the stuff that we listened to from the very beginnings of music, from me, whether it be Frankie Valli and the Four Seasons, because I grew up in an Italian household in Miami, all that stuff I grew up listening to, and I eventually morphed that into my love for Michael Jackson, Twisted Sister, Run DMC, everything I wound up listening to for the rest of my life. I don't know if those kinds of experiences are had by a lot of people now. I mean, I know there's a lot of people, young people that are like, oh, I used to listen to that when I was a kid, but I'm like, I don't even know who they are. Like, it sucks. This isn't us trying to poop on new generations at all. This is us trying to figure out what I guess maybe no one else has figured out before us, and why is it an in my day thing, and why we can't dig music. Because I really haven't listened to any new music, hardcore wise, past like 2005.
Well, you know what? It's just so great. I've got an answer for you. I was doing a little research today, and I came across an article in Psychology Today from about a year and a half ago. And it basically explains, and it's titled "Why Old People Hate New Music." And it's really got a lot of very interesting points as you go through it. And it talks, first of all, about new music, our musical taste solidify as early as 13 or 14 years old. And they get locked into place firmly in our early 20s. And they say that there's studies that indicate most of us stop exploring new music entirely by the time we turn 33. And they also say in these studies that if there was a song that was released when you're in your early teens, that song is likely to remain quite popular among your age group throughout your life. So that tells me that, there is evidence that the brain's ability to make those distinctions between, different kind of chords and musical elements that you hear from what you're young and you're listening to versus what you hear today. Because as you've now gotten to the point where your brain has already kind of picked up the music it's liked, and it's malleable to that point, it's no longer malleable after that 30s age. And at that point, you're just kind of like, this is my music. So that makes sense, because that's about with me too, where it's like, not that I give up. I try to listen to it. But it's hard, man. I don't like it, man. I don't like it. I want somebody to tell me this song, check this song out,
So this is, and I know we've already discussed this. I feel like I've looked at this list so many times. This is the list of the highest rated albums when you and I were around 13 years old. Okay, Peter Gabriel, So, Paul Simon, Graceland,
oh my God.
Run DMC, Raising Hell, Beastie Boys, License to Ill, Elvis Costello and the Attractions, Depeche Mode, Frank Zappa, Mantronics.
Oh my God.
The Pretenders, Janet Jackson, Genesis, Sonic Youth, Rolling Stones, Madonna, REM. So this is what I'm trying to say. And I know that was an explosive year. And if what you were saying is correct, which I believe that study is probably very accurate, all of those bands, we remember all of that shit. Because if you could just think about us being 12, 13 years old when all of that music was on the radio. Are you kidding me right now? Like maybe 10 years ago, the same shit happened. And we just didn't know about it because we were still so listening to Lady in Red and remembering about this girl or this breakup or this time, you crushed your finger in wood shop or whatever. Like there's all kinds of memories that we attach to it. So I guess at some point you do stop listening to current music because you don't necessarily want to make current memories. You want to make sure you preserve the old ones.
And that's what kind of goes that article went into after that, was saying that there is even a simpler explanation and it's the mere exposure effect. And they say one of the most reliable laws of psychology is something called the mere exposure effect. In a nutshell, means that within certain limits, the more familiar we are with something and the more often we're exposed to it, the more we tend to like it. So it works for other people, consumer products, and even for music. So this made a lot of sense when you're in your teens and spending a lot of time listening to music, discussing it with your friends, watching videos. The songs and the artists who are popular during that time become familiar and comforting parts of your life. And after you're 30 or so, your life's too busy to allocate that type of attention to discovering music and doing things like that, advancing your career and your family. I mean, that's going to change. And familiar songs, I mean, we could fill in the words and sounds that elude us, even when there's a lot of background noise, because we know that music, it's already in our head. We got it, and it'll be in our head for hours afterwards. And that's why that familiar music, that's what we hear when we're young, and it's going to stay the most familiar to us forever. And I feel like that is so true.
Well, we've got a lot of people on right now. This is awesome. A lot of people are watching us right now, and not to mention the comment section between Sherry, Sarah, Tammy. Who else we have here? Brandon, what's up? Be Red. What's your favorite band from the last 10 years? So I'll give you a decade. All right, I'll give you a decade right now. So from 2011 to right now, anybody who's in the comment section right now, tell me a band that was created within that area of time or got popular during that area of time, and let me know who that is. We got a lot of people watching right now. We're up to about 16 people watching, which is kick-ass. Thank you so much for coming out and hanging out. I don't know if we're just a couple of old dudes. I'd like to think I'm open-minded, right? Doesn't everybody? Right. Doesn't everybody like to think I could listen to everything? Because we did grow up. My first concert ever was Michael Jackson. Right after that was Robert Plant. I think after that was probably Cheap Trick. I mean, we've seen a lot of stuff come through Miami, but and I think there's a lot of stuff that's new that I'm sure people are enjoying now too. But I don't know, man. We needed a millennial on the damn show today.
Well, I saw Sarah commented earlier and saying that she listens to some of her kids' stuff or whatever and likes some of it. So, I mean, I think that's where older folks are going to get into that a little bit more. I have a 7-year-old, so she's not quite picking her music yet, but I mean, ultimately that's going to happen too. And I've seen people comment about that as well, that, you're kind of watching your kids enjoy it. And it just, you kind of like that just because you're seeing your kids enjoy it. So I feel like that's a place where people can do something. Yeah. Sarah saying Bruno Mars, that's a guy with staying power too, for sure. If you ask me.
Yeah, the guy's kind of a badass. I don't like to use the P word, and I'll never use the P word again. But he's a little similar to the Purple guy, where he just sort of finds a way to kind of make everything very, very, very catchy and good.
Right.
Again, I don't want to compare them in any way like that.
But I see it's a good non-comparison that you're making.
Yeah, they're in the. He's lucky to be in that neighborhood.
That's a huge compliment. But
yeah, dude, forget it. We got Aaron Jones from B Red. Sarah, thanks for commenting. Tammy as well. Sherry as well. Congos and the Congos. See you folks. You guys are hip.
I don't know these people.
You guys are freaking hip, man. Again, I watched part 2 of History yesterday. I don't really know if I'm the guy that needs to be talking about current music, but there's good
Congos
stuff.
And magic. Interesting.
So listen, I'm going to go ahead and say, all right, so when it comes to new heavy metal, I have dug a lot of Avenged Sevenfold stuff. Okay. I do like I like Five Fingers' second album, War is the Answer, and then everything after that, not at all. There's a couple new metal bands I like. Is there a couple new college bands I have heard? I don't know. I think I've mentioned 21 Pilots. God, there's a couple. There's a couple songs that I've heard, and then when I've delved into that band's sort of catalog, I haven't loved the rest of them. So it's almost sort of like maybe I'm being hit with something formulaic on the radio because I don't have satellite radio. I'm one of the only people who still listens to dial radio, even though I have buttons. I still listen to radio in my car. I don't have any. I don't even have a CD player. They're all stuck in my dashboard right now. But I don't have the luxury of any of that, so I still listen to what the airwaves produce. I could be a victim of all that, but even on like hard rock stations, I'm not loving everything I'm hearing.
That's true. That is
It,
true.
it's just too weird for me, man. And
It
so
is.
I try and get into it, but I don't know. I don't
Well, I
know.
think it has a lot to do with what we were talking about, though, with that, and just the way that you're kind of we're already kind of set, man. It's kind of a set in your ways type of thing with music, I guess. But it has a lot to do with just a young person's brain in general. That's how a lot of things are. We learn these things as when we're younger, and our minds are in that a bit has that ability and the time to really kind of do this and formulate the stuff that we really like and we want to listen to, which to me will not be Pooh Shiesty featuring Little Dark.
Tammy, the Foo Fighter. Let me tell you, the Foo Fighters to me, Foo Fighters get grandfathered in with their attachment to Nirvana. So I'm not going to call them new. And for me,
They're not new.
As much as I love that band,
yes,
my favorite album of theirs is still their debut album. It is
Great
all
album.
very punk rock. It's just sort of like Boston's first album and Nine Inch Nails, where he just made the whole damn thing himself and then started hiring people. But
right.
they're still old. But I think there's a few.
But that's another one though.
Right now.
That's another one where I know it's the band, and there's a lot of great musicians in that band.
They crossed over.
David Grohl is my point, though. It's like that all happens because of Grohl. Nobody else in that band or management.
But millennials love him too. Millennials love him too. As much as we know Dave Grohl's a badass, so does like a 20-year-old kid right now. They're like, Dave Grohl's a badass.
I don't know how many 20-year-olds are going to even know that name if you say it to anyone. I don't know. I think you'd be lucky if you got 1 or 2 out of 10 that would even know the name. Foo Fighters, they would know. But if you say Dave Grohl, anyway, who the fuck are you talking about? You say lead singer Foo Fighters, like, oh yeah.
I feel like he's in the news all the damn time. I feel like that.
What news though, bro? What news you talking about, man?
Blabbermouth.
Watch the same news we watch, man. They ain't got a Flipboard or something. What the fuck, man? Come on.
They're like, what's news anyway? You guys read news? That's whack.
It's not we watch Walter Cronkite all together every night anymore, like we did when we were a kid. There's a name no one will know.
There's a chink in the armor. Yeah, we can go very old school, but we're not going to do that. Wait, what's Tammy saying? Tammy, don't get mad. I know Foo isn't new. Yeah, you're right. You're right. And what's funny is that that's a new older band. So if we want to start getting technical,
well, they just did come out with a new album. So.
They're an anomaly because Nirvana got popular in our senior year of school, and then as we left and went on into the world, Nirvana got bigger, and then Foo Fighters came from all that. So that's another one of those bands that's sort of in there, I believe, in the grunge end era that managed to last a very long time. And I think I made fun of what people call grunge bands a long time ago, but I no longer do. The bands that are actually grunge, like Mudhoney and anything that was on Sub Pop, I never really got into anyway. But I say Soundgarden is hard rock. I say Nirvana is even hard rock. Alice in Chains is definitely hard rock, heavy metal in some ways, blues in some ways. So I don't know, man. The labels, again, those are industry driven. So we don't really, mumble rap doesn't seem like an industry term. Why would you want to sell that term? But they bought it. They bought it hard. It's selling like a mother, man.
I don't know about all that. It's not my thing. Sorry, just doesn't do it.
I know.
Doesn't do it for me, man. I don't know, man. It's not. It's just even the music. Like Tammy was mentioning earlier, she's 46 and still likes to find new music, and that's fine. That's great. I mean, especially when you're pulling it out of all these different places, she finds like artists in Iceland or something like that. She does that all the time and listen to this and listen to that, and and that's great. I think that's awesome that people are still able to do that later in life. Even they're not just going to stick with their bread and butter music. They're going to want to hear and try to test out more music. And I'm always there to hear it, but it's very few and far between where I'm like, yep, I agree. I like that one. That's a pretty good jam. And even when there is, it's like 1 or 2 songs. It's not like there's not much more beyond that. Like you said, when you dive into the catalogs, there's not a lot of depth to it. So once again, you've been able to hit what we used to call back in the day a one-hit wonder. And I mean, they don't even say that anymore because there's no albums anymore. There's no really, radio anymore to see who gets the biggest radio play. So it's not about being a one-hit wonder. There's plenty of musicians. That's all they have is one freaking hit. And they make a lot of money. They make a name for themselves. And they market themselves on social media properly, which is what I wanted to get back real quick to Dave Grohl. He did that. Dave Grohl saw what was happening, and he made sure his band was a part of the social media ascension. He made sure that his band was right there on top of all that Instagram feeds and Facebook feeds. He had his music and commercials. He was doing things that he knew would help to be able to make people know who it, maybe not him like we spoke about a minute ago, but who his band is. That's the type of stuff that you have to do today to be able to keep yourself current. You do have to actually promote yourself and keep yourself current in all means of social media, be it selling music or a podcast even. I mean, it's all about what's hot, who's you can get in front of. And then from there, like, what kind of an audience can you keep with what you've now produced?
Right.
You know?
That's a big deal right there.
Right.
We've got Crystal join us recently right now, Ready Red, Ryan Maker. Folks, if you want to go ahead and just let us know. I asked this question before you popped up in here, or maybe you were here the whole time. Who is your favorite band from the last 10 years? That's kind of what I'm getting at. And you know, Ken's been awesome. He's always this is what I can always count on you for too, is being able to do the research and find some scientific backing for this stuff, because it's sort of like that question where everybody who works in food service, why is it when you walk through a door, you forget about what it is that you went in there for? Well, it's an event barrier. Once you go through that doorway, you forget, because when you were a kid, everything that you had in a different room was a different memory, and you forgot it. And you learned, don't go in mom's room, go here, blah, 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 blah. But when it comes to music, if it's what you're saying is it's a learned thing, and it's something that we absorb in a massive amount up into a specific age, and then, as you say, then life starts happening, and then we can no longer give a shit about who's on the radio anymore, unless we happen to be partying one night or just listening. You know, people like us who are actually musicians or more apt to listen to music, I think, than a lot of people.
Right.
But we're also probably more apt to criticize the shit out of them as well.
Well, that's true.
Arctic Monkeys we got from Sherry. I've heard that name. I don't know.
I think I've heard that one too, but I wouldn't be able to tell you anything from that one. But that's an interesting name.
It sounds like a kick-ass movie.
I would like an Arctic monkey. That'd be a cool pet.
I'd like to see that movie. It'd be badass. Arctic monkeys in a world. It seems really cool.
So I also just wanted to really just kind of the very end of this this Psychology Today article, talking about the teen years being emotional time, just to kind of reinforce a little bit of that. It mentions in there that the emotions we experience as teens seem more intense than what comes later, and strong emotions make for strong memories and strong likes and dislikes, including the music we listen to. So those strong emotions are clearly related to the changes in the brain's sensitivity to certain types of information during adolescence. Emotions signal the brain that important events are happening, and the teen years are chock full of important social feedback about one's skills, attractiveness, status, desirability as a mate. So that's the stuff that we're relating along with our music. And I really like this girl, and she told me I should listen to this song. Well, that song's going to be like the best song right now, because this is your connection all of a sudden. So there's this kind of stuff really does kind of embed itself into you. And I don't even know, I'm sure while it's happening, we're not even noticing it, but it does happen, and it does bring us back when we think about these things. So at the end of the day, I don't think there's anything wrong with parents not liking their kids' music. It seems like it's like the natural order of things. And ultimately, there can be times where people can relate to other types of music, or some people maybe that didn't have as strong as an impression of music on their life when they were younger, maybe would feel a little different about music as they got older as well. So very interesting article. Just the psychological side of that went beautiful. A little bit beyond just kind of what we were thinking, just, to 47-year-olds that don't like today's music.
I think it's a smart thing to do as a parent right off the bat, is to pay attention to what your kids are listening to. It's going to give you a lot of insight to slang, terminologies, activities, what they do, what kind of weeds they're smoking. There's a lot of stuff that you're going to be able to get out of that. But
is it though? I mean, I don't know about that. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I'm just saying this because now think back to what we were listening to. I mean, we had Ozzy telling us about Suicide Solution, and there were even stories of people killing themselves to this music and stuff like that. So, but me, I mean, I was listening to all that, and a lot of the lyrics within Megadeth, Metallica, stuff like that. Some of that can get pretty heavy, and I always just loved it for the lyrical sense of what it was.
Right.
I was never looking in. Like, well, I'm not going to kill myself, and now
I don't mean it like that.
Okay. I'm just saying, if you looked at it that way, you would think that though. You'd be like, "Oh my God, what are you serious? My kid's gonna kill himself.
Literally.
He's listening to Suicide Solution from Ozzy. This is no good." And then in the news, a kid actually did so, listening to that music.
I just meant it's a smart way. I think you can stay hip and you can stay in the know of what things are. It's not gonna. You're certainly not gonna be able to get into the psyche of your kid's brain by listening to their fucking music, because it's all bullshit when we were growing up, and it's all insane. And our parents thought it was crazy back then. But I don't know. I think at the same time, I think it's a smart way to stay in tune with your kids, because at the very least, if they're listening to music, that's a pretty cool thing.
But today is supposedly the more dangerous time. We've got people going to schools with guns. You've got so this is the more dangerous time. But the music's not saying that per se. Not like some of the stuff that was said in some of the music that we listen to. I mean, and there wasn't a lot of those things going on even back then. So it's almost like flipped. It's like, oh my God, the music is really bad. We can't do this. We're going to turn our kids into monsters. But there really wasn't many monsters. Now we've put so much into censoring music and what gets said and what can get said, that there's more of it now. So obviously that experiment didn't work whatsoever. So it's one of these situations where it's like the music, what's being said is one thing. Okay, people are kids are killing themselves because they're told to over social media, or they're bullied over social media. I mean, you're seeing stuff like that happening, and it's playing to something different than what music you're listening to. I don't think that's really what it is anymore. At the end of the day, music should just appease to one thing, and that's our ears and our sensory, and make us just feel like we want to feel from that music or not. We might feel like, I don't like this, I could care less about that, turn that crap off or turn it up. We're all going to have a different kind of mindset based on what we like when we hear that music, but that should be the only sensory to that. It shouldn't be about those words. You shouldn't be listening to that per se, because you can't believe that a kid's just going to go right out and do something that's said in a song.
Right, and they normally aren't. Again, it's just it's expression, and asking anybody to take any of that shit literally is just asking for trouble. Again, if you took anything literal from Kiss, you would be very confused anyway. You would realize right away, though. You would realize right away that anytime they said love or kiss, it usually meant the F word, or they were talking about their penis.
Dude, I have texted Bob at least 20 times in the last 10 years or so, just with lyrics from a Kiss song for me to be able to understand better. What does he mean by this? I'll send. Boom, he's got the answer. So if you ever need the answer to any of it, he knows it. There is a code. There's a code there somewhere.
There is. Sherry says we had Two Left Crew and NWA. We can't say shit about.
But that's what started it. Good point, Sherry. Right. But that's what started it. That's what I'm saying. That's when the government got into it, even, and
thanks
everyone
to
else got
them,
into
we
it.
can't say shit about it.
That's right. I'm glad you pointed that out, because that's exactly why they can't really do that anymore. And the precautions that have been put into place to try to keep that kind of music at least out of the mainstream. I know it still exists. People still make it, and kids still find it, but. My point is, it shouldn't freaking matter. Is my point. Right. It's music, man. If a kid is dumb enough to take his life from lyrics in a song, then I mean that's natural selection, man. I'm sorry, dude. You got to be able to know better. That's not what you do. That's a bad decision.
Yeah, something was going to happen, irregardless.
Right. It wasn't the song. Just like it was with the kid with the Suicide Solution. When that whole story came back out, if you even look at it today, it had nothing to do with the damn song. At the end of the day, it didn't. That kid had much more serious issues, and if he wanted to place it there, he could. But that's not the reason why.
Yeah, and I've heard a lot of like I've said, we're exposed to a lot of new music. I think because you've got a little kid, and you'll be exposed to a lot of new music throughout the course of your life. Unfortunately for you, but hopefully it's off the path of Barney and more on the path of something a little bit more.
Dude, I got my wife listening to new music all the time, so it's constant here anyway. I'm already getting it because I hear her music constantly. It's what plays every night when we eat dinner. She tries to put the rock portion of it on. She gives me like a playlist of stuff that I can listen to at least. A lot of Foo Fighters in there, I'll say that.
Good gosh, man. Yeah, well, Foo Fighters, that's another one of those bands, like some people say they don't like them, and you start rambling off songs that are like, yeah, that's a good song. Yeah, that's a good song. Yeah, that's a good song. Like, really...
Sorry to interrupt you. I was just reading what Crystal wrote down there about her niece being bullied in school for a month, kept it a secret, and she committed suicide. That is, let me tell you, that's something right there that, really talks to about what bullying can do and how serious kids feel at that, at that age, and how malleable their minds are to what other people are saying. That's very sad. Very sorry to hear that, and it's terrible that those types of things happen. It breaks my heart when I see my little girl bullied by other girls, in the neighborhood that are older than her and whatnot. And I mean, it's just part of what goes on, but it's just how extreme does it get? It's so hard to know and tell, and that's a shame right there. Thank you for sharing that, Chris.
Yeah, that's why I kind of wanted to make sure that went up there. I find it odd, some of the things that stick, and when it comes to the throwaway culture of what's going on now. The fact that YouTube is more of like a television set than what we assumed it was when we first started seeing it. We just thought it was this application on a computer, but it's an eyeball into the world because you can just connect anything to it.
Right.
And that's kind of a scary thing. And so then with all that becomes judgment and all these other things. I think maybe that might have something to do with why there's been a little bit of a halt in the music, but I still believe the fact that there is no record industry or no massive record industry to push a medium, whether it be disc or MP4, whatever the case may be. Everyone's already sharing music for free. I don't know if there's any way to get away from that ever again. I don't know if there's any way to make money selling copies of your music, considering anybody can make a copy of it and sell it. So, that may be something that was going on as well, where maybe you're seeing so many new bands because bands just can't stick around anymore.
Right. I definitely agree with that. And look, that's why we were talking about before the show as well, about what we talked about a little bit during the show is also for bands that are going to have that staying power and be able to be here for a long time. So from 2000, let's go 20 years, from year 2000, and then from 1980 to 2000 or 70, let's say the older stuff. Give me 3 names. All right, Bob, you give me 3 names of anyone that is prior to 2000 and that have big names, big staying power names, and then 3 after 2000. And if you can, even name 3 after 2000.
You mean that? So you want me to hear 3 that got big before 2000 and 3 that got big after 2000?
Right, the ones that would have that staying power to be a 20, 30 year type of band or group that
just before 2000.
Those are easy, obviously.
Yeah,
before is easier.
We'll go with 2 piano people, like say Billy Joel and Elton John, and then let's throw Metallica in there before.
Okay, see, that was easy.
So after 2000, a band that I don't really love, I think Linkin Park can be in there, right?
Okay.
But again, let's not go too. I understand he committed suicide, but
I get it. Yeah,
it still would have been a thing with them. I think they might have still been around.
No, I agree. And again, a fusion band. Another reason why I think the staying power is there for a band like that. So I like that. That's a good one.
I can't come up with any more. I don't think, man. I was gonna, Jamiroquai. I'm just kidding. I don't know. There's just not a lot of.
I like Jamiroquai. What happened to that guy? I actually like that guy. That guy was actually pretty cool, man.
I know. I said that not as a joke.
I have that.
I'm glad you picked that up. I say that not as a joke, man. We need more of that uplifting.
We need more Jamiroquai's, man.
Good shit. Yeah. I don't know, man. I guess you're right. After 2000 thing, and does that correlate directly with the crash of the record industry? Because
that's even beyond that, though. You're right. I mean, that's part of it. But again, it's the musicians. It's the staying power of music. If you can make music to where you're going to come back, you're going to come back, you're going to come back, you'll have it. I mean, for me, I could name 3. I could use your name. We just go with Bob. I'll give you 3 Bobs. Dylan, Seeger, and Marley. I mean, there you go. There's 3 Bobs that are going to be better than anything that's out there today, easily.
That's crazy.
So leaving that, I think the ones you would look at would be ones we mentioned a little bit today of bands that could continue. Taylor Swift, she's going to do it. She's going to.
I'll do yours. Kenny Rogers.
You're going to do Ken? Kenny Rogers.
Kenny Rogers, right? Kenny G, and Kenny Loggins.
There we go. Hey, man, 3 Kennys right there, man.
They're all crushing it.
And then it would be Taylor Swift, Bruno Mars, and probably Justin Bieber, if you ask me. I think the 3 of them can continue to market themselves, sell themselves, and stay enough into the mainstream. I mean, look at Bieber. Bieber was hot because like a lot of girls loved him. It was a look, first of all. Obviously, the music's the music, but that thing kind of flew out there and did their thing. But he'll be able to market himself continuously and do that. He's still in the top 40 now, even though he's taken more of a backseat to some other bands. But Bieber could do it. Taylor Swift could do it. And I think Bruno Mars, as you mentioned earlier, I think those guys could all do it. right there, but those three don't come anywhere close to my three Bobs, right? Seeger, maybe not everybody knows, but Bob Dylan and Bob Marley are two of just like, come on, man, some of the greatest musicians ever, right there. And those are just Bobs, dude.
On a night move, dude. Let me tell you, man.
I love Seegers.
The beautiful thing is that we were able to see the end of the '60s, the explosion of the '70s, the creation of the '80s, the '90s. It's kind of amazing the time we lived in, and this show is not even a complaint. I tell you right now, if I don't understand music for the rest of my life, it will not matter. I have so much music that I love from the time that I've been alive, from the time that I was able to enjoy music, play music, understand music, create music, all the way to this point in my life. I could never have another band cross my path ever again and be completely fine with that, man. I think our generation is just. I understand we probably would like to have been born or grown up during a specific generation, but man, what we were growing up with is amazing, man. It's kind of crazy.
I definitely agree. I mean, obviously we're biased. We grew up during that time. I would think that there are some people, that don't feel that way of when they grew up and they weren't into their music like that. So I'd like to believe it's not just that everybody would say that. But I truly do believe that just as you said, being able to kind of usher out of the classic rock and the music of the 60s and the 70s into kind of the fusion that we saw into the 80s, and then finally into the 90s, where we really saw hip hop come up strong to kind of contend with rock and even surpass rock into the 2000s. And then to watch that, the 2000s, where it was the Snoop Dogg's and the Dre's and everybody like that turning into now, the P. Diddy's and the Kanye's, and then that turned into the 50 Cents and hip hop just kept kind of going. But then people started listening to more Taylor Swift than they were listening to 50 Cent. So that ascension started to take off, and it broke away a lot of what the popular music was. Because for a while in the early 2000s, hip hop was today's music. That was the top 40 music. You'd go through the top 40 and it was going to be all hip hop artists. Hip hop was king. So just like, rock was king kind of in the 80s and into alternative stuff into the 90s. So these are the types of things. I had a conversation in the 90s with an employee of mine who was big into all the new hip hop, kept bringing stuff in. First time I ever heard of Kanye and Eminem and all this stuff. And, before they were big at all, man, this kid was all into that stuff. And I was a rock guy, so we'd always listen to classic rock in our store. But, after we shut down, closed the doors, he put some of that in. And, I got into it a little bit, listened to it. And he said, this is bigger than rock. It's going to be bigger than rock, he said. I'm like, it might be, but it's going to be a limited time. This will last forever. I'm like, no, it's going to go in and out. And people will like it, and then it'll go again. And that's exactly what happened. And I'm proud to say I said that in my 20s, and I was right in my 40s. It pretty much did exactly that. But that's not a premonition. That's life. That's the way these things go. Things are going to come in, and we're going to have fads even within music. So the social experiment that is underway and has been so since the mid late 90s to now, with information processed the way it is. Kids are now old enough to only know of information processing this way, to be able to hear music just with a click of a button, whatever you want to hear. What are you talking about, Mom? Who's the Temptations? Boom, pop in the Temptations. Could be the first time that kid's ever heard that song before, but maybe it means something a little bit different, and I see that with my niece, who said when 12 years old or so, she liked that new music, but then she's like, it all sounds the same now. Even to a millennial, I heard this, and that might just be this one girl, but she tells me she likes to kind of go back and listen to some older stuff, and she wants to hear a little bit more of what was, what there was before. And you can do that today. It's so easy. You don't have to go and spend your money on an album of somebody that I just want to see if I like this. You're not going to do that. You just pop it in anywhere and just listen to whatever you want, old, new, and in between. And I think that the fact that the kids have that today is spectacular. But does that play into why there's no one big artist anymore? Because it's so diluted, like I said, and spread out to what kids like, that you really can't just have that one big artist per se.
Well, I think big music will go as the industry goes. So since the industry does not go as big as it used to go, what they have to do now is ride a wave. So they're riding a wave of this mumble rap stuff. They're riding a wave.
The fuck is mumble rap? You said that 3 times. I don't even know what mumble rap is. I'm imagining it's rap that you don't understand, which is most of all rap. That's like all of them. I won't say that, actually. There's plenty that I dig. That's part of what I like about rap, is when you can understand what they're saying and the lyrics are cool. You know what I mean?
Listen, I lived in Texas during Swisher House, during during the time when they were drinking lean like crazy and like I knew all that. That's screw. There was a reason why they did that. There was the mumble rap stuff that's out right now is just repetitive words over and over and over and over.
That's why you talk like that, because it's too much meth.
I wish at least meth would have give you a little pep in your step. These folks, in fact, it's just not upbeat. But again, I'm not shitting on anybody. I'm just saying record companies, if there's gonna be a record company that's gonna produce you or put your shit out, they know that you're gonna last a year, maybe 2. So they're gonna push you as hard as you can. They're gonna make you a millionaire and them a billionaire, and they're gonna do the same thing to the next person, boom, over and over and over.
Right.
It's a much more disposable industry right now than it was a long time ago.
There's no doubt. I think that adds to all of this, right? That's kind of just one cog in all of this to where music is today and stuff. But yeah, I mean, look, it all comes back to kind of what we're talking about and what was mentioned about what we're going to listen to. And I think most people are going to always have that comfort, at least the comfort part with music, with stuff that they were listening to when they were younger. That to me, I feel like, unless they've had some other major event in their life with a family member or someone they love and they correlated certain music to it, those events, those big events are always going to kind of be where we're going to keep the music close to our hearts.
Do you have any tickets to concerts coming up in the next year?
Yes, I do have some tickets. I'm actually flying out to Colorado in August to see the Black Crowes at Red Rocks, which I'm super stoked about. What else do I have tickets to? Tickets for 2022. Saying what else is in 2021? I'm going to see Dr. Brian as he does his show down here August 14th at the South Bay Cultural Arts Center. You got to check that out. A bunch of Steely Dan covers. So, but I don't know. My other music is 2022, man. I got the Doobie Brothers. I got that Motley Crue, Poison, all those old rockers that are doing that.
Okay. See, this is my point. I'll say the next concert I'm going to see Primus play Rush.
I heard about this.
Farewell to King.
They were going to do this last year, right? They pushed this,
right? Yeah, they pushed it away.
That's awesome.
Then we've got third row tickets to Bill Burr, and we've got third row tickets to George Lopez. And I think Circle Jerks are going to do Group Sex in its entirety. So here's the funny thing. The amount of tickets that you
great statement. I love it.
All the bands that you and I are going to see, along with all of the comedians that you and I might be going to see this year, are all from our youth. All of them were around back then. We didn't mention one freaking band. We are not going to see
other than Dr. Brian, but although Dr. Brian is playing Steely Dan music, which is from the 60s.
Although I really would love to go see that, dude. I'm a massive. I kick myself for not being able to see Steely Dan before, unfortunately, before Becker died.
Right.
I don't know. I said that about Petty too. Whatever. That's my cross to bear, I guess. At this point, there's a lot.
Check it out. They got some of it on YouTube too. It's called "Do It Again." It's what they're doing. It's which is from one of their songs, obviously Steely Dan song. But that's it's really, really cool, man. It sounds great. The music is spectacular with it as well. Of course, the guitar rips.
Doc Bryan has a way of pissing me off when I watch him play, because it's almost as if he's smiling and his fingers are doing he makes that shit look so easy. and like, I tried to play guitar. Guitar was the first thing I picked up. I got so angry with it that I switched to cello, which I actually excelled in, and then stand-up bass. But I became a drummer out of necessity because I would just fucking hated theory. But that's when Doc Bryan just started diving into theory.
Right.
And was like, I'm learning all of this shit.
We would ride our bikes by his house. He's up that 2-story, that one wind light on all night, just guitar. That's why
he's crushing Steely Dan.
As he should be, with no problem at all, too. They sound great.
At any rate, guys, thank you so much for coming out and hanging out with us. Everybody who was able to hang out with us and talk with us in the chat portion, Crystal, Tammy, Brandon, Sherry, who else do we have up here? The rest of you guys. Thank you so much for at least taking a couple moments out. This was sort of a subject that we thought about as we do, 24 hours before the show starts. We think of something to talk about, but believe me, when there's no shortage of burning desires in the brains of myself and Ken Man. So although this was probably an easy one to talk about, I still don't know that we answered anything other than we're old and we're not going to listen to Linkin Park much longer in our life, and a lot of the stuff that is
not live
new.
Anyway, guys, we will see you next week. What's next week's episode? We don't know, but we'll figure it out sometime before then. So you guys take care and take care of each other. Be well.